You're watching Stat News Global. I'm Amitabh Brevi, and joining us is Ranjan, a trade policy analyst. Ranjan, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Amitabh. Glad to be here.
Just getting your views on India and South Africa writing to the WTO. Now, they want certain provisions of the trips to be amended or waived so that developing countries aren't left behind in the race to fight COVID, right?
Yes, in many ways, this is not unprecedented. We have seen developing countries approach the TRIPS Council on many occasions in the past, where there's been a requirement of relaxing some of the provisions within the TRIPS agreement to allow for easier and affordable access to life-saving medicine. Now, if you look at it, the the member states of the WTO are very well empowered to take these kind of measures unilaterally. But what we have seen letter that's been sent by India and South Africa is that there is an effort to generate international consensus that this we find ourselves in a very extraordinary situation, and the international community needs to come together to allow for affordable and easy access to any kind of medicine, which is either a vaccine or something which is a prophylactic or a curative drug that we're seeing in the market right now. And this kind of comes from the experience that these countries have faced in the past, where there has always been a tussle between the North and the South at the WTO when it comes to access to pharmaceuticals. And this is no different, except the fact that we find ourselves in a position where even a lot of developed countries are going to support the initiative to relax TRIPS provisions in the event we have a vaccine which is ready to be deployed to the global community.
When you're referring to the past, are you referring to uh, HIV or AIDS and the efforts to combat that? And that saw a battle between the North and the South?
Well, allow me to take you a few decades back, before the WTO came into existence. You see, in the 1970s, India came out with its Patent Act. And in that, India only allowed the product to be patented, not the process to be patented. What this led to was the mushrooming of the generic pharmaceutical industry in India. And now India enjoys the title of the pharmacy of the world. And rightly so. As Indians, we should be proud of that because we have been providing life saving drugs to least developed countries and developing countries for decades now. However, after the Uruguay round, which brought the WTO into existence, we saw a change in the some of the multilateral arrangements that country came together. One of the agreements under the WTO is the trade related intellectual properties agreement. Now, within that, what India had to do was it had to change its domestic legislation to allow for both process and product patenting. So now India could not simply tweak the process of making a medicine and make a generic version of the same medicine. Now, both steps were protected. But we also saw the inclusion of Article 31 in the TRIPS, which allows for compulsory licensing. Now, compulsory licensing is essentially allows someone who is a to produce a patented product or a process without necessarily infringing on the rights of the patent holder. So today, if I'm South Africa and I feel that my national circumstances are extraordinary, I may issue a compulsory license to manufacture medicine which is life saving from an HIV perspective. Similarly, we have seen this play out on many occasions where, for example, in 1997, South Africa uh, amended their national law to allow for easier and affordable access to generic versions of life saving HIV drugs. And we have seen this play out on many occasions across the world. Now, Article 31, there was a problem with Article 31. Article 31 only allowed uh, these medicines to be produced primarily for domestic market usage.
Yeah.
Now, the problem in this scenario was that there were many least developed countries who did not have the manufacturing capability. So, how do they extract the benefit out of a provision like this in an extraordinary or dire situation like we find ourselves in today? And that's where one of the ministerial rounds that took place in Doha
Mhm.
in 2001, there was a path breaking decision that was taken where another article was added to to Article 31 that allowed these least developed countries to issue compulsory licenses for importing products. So, for example, let's take Ghana for example. Now, Ghana needs life-saving drugs to fight malaria. It issues a compulsory license against a drug which is developed by one of the large pharmaceutical companies in the US, but it issues it to India.
Yeah.
India here becomes the exporting country, and India is able to supply those goods through a mechanism of parallel import to Ghana at a cost, at a fraction of the cost as one would have encountered when it would be buying directly from the pharmaceutical company. So in a nutshell, what we've seen is an evolution of the intellectual property regime, where public health has been given precedence on many other occasions. And I do not see the COVID-19 situation as any different. In fact, this is a situation which is more pronounced. This is a situation which warrants more international community support rather than this existing tussle between the North and the South on IP rights versus public health interventions.
So you don't see the big drug companies and lobbying with the developed countries to try and prevent something like this because they're seeing it as usurping their profits, or as they put it, they're recouping what they've invested into research and development.
Well, that's been a standard argument that
Yeah.
pharmaceutical companies have used, and it's fallen flat on every occasion, to be honest. But having said that, there is a lot of investment that these pharmaceutical companies have made at risk on COVID-19 vaccine development. We are also seeing countries protecting the current efficacy data around these vaccines. It's become one of those closely guarded state secrets right now, and we are also
Yeah.
seeing episodes of other countries trying to extract this kind of data, the formula through cyber attacks. Again, we've seen attempts by China to attack US infrastructure to get access to this data. We've seen attempts by Russia, and similar attempts are going on across the world. So there is definitely a race going on, and there is a valid economic opportunity that many nations see out of emerging out of this. And so, from that perspective, there is definitely going to be a pushback from the pharmaceutical lobby through the countries that they are headquartered in. But at the same, and we've seen this kind of play out at the World Health Assembly, which
Mhm.
happened earlier in May this year, where even the role of vaccines was not regarded as a global public good. The WHO restricted itself to just calling extensive immunization against COVID 19 as a global public good, but which did not include the role of vaccines. So we have seen a dilution of the language over there. And that's primarily because there was a pushback from the United States at the
Mhm.
World Health Assembly. And given the kind of behavior that we've seen with regards to the WTO of the United States and the growing kind of, I would say, this disillusionment with the multilateral trading forum, We can expect some degree of fireworks to come through once the vaccine is developed.
When you look at the WTO itself and India's and South Africa's letter, how does that proceed? We do hear that it's possible that the council will be meeting 15th, 16th October, but how does it proceed in terms of either the council accepting it or rejecting it?
So the council, the way the procedure works is that the council will take this into consideration, and the council members will then take a decision as to what the recommendation should be to the general council, which is where there's a representation of every country. Now, once this goes to the general council, there is a vote that happens. Now, any kind of proposal that is pushed by the general council, there has to be unanimous acceptance to the same. So, for example, if one country says, no, we cannot do this, that whole recommendation falls flat. We can expect that to happen, probably on grounds of technicalities and other legal provisions that may be pointed out by some developed countries. But uh, that is not going to be the end of the situation. The the countries, as I said, very much have the option of unilaterally
Yeah.
imposing compulsory licensing requirements. We've already seen, and the letter also calls this out, we've already seen countries enacting national legislation towards this effect. We've seen a developed country like Canada do this. We've seen Chile, we've seen Italy. All of these countries realize that not only certain life-saving drugs like remdesivir are going to be essential in
Mhm.
tackling the COVID-19 problem, and we need to develop systems which allow for prompt and scalable solutions to ensure that this reaches the masses at an affordable price.
And the request again, India and South Africa, is not just when you actually reach that stage of a vaccine. You're talking about drugs, you're talking about procedures, anything related to COVID, right?
Anything related to COVID, I think one thing that we've seen already play out in Netherlands is where Roche was trying to protect secrets around this drug remdesivir, but the Dutch authorities have launched an anti-competitive investigation against Roche, and that's something that you are also able to do under the TRIPS in order to get access to that medicine. So what we've seen is that already countries are pushing back against these practices that have been employed by pharmaceutical companies. So this is not something that is just restricted to uh, a vaccine, which may be on the anvil, but also the drugs that have come right now, the immuno drugs that have come right now, the monoclonic suppressants that have come right now, and the PPEs, the ventilators, all of these things which require a significant degree of manufacturing capability. And unfortunately, if you see how least developed countries are getting affected by the pandemic, it is incumbent on the global community to come together and find a solution which meets the needs of the societies over there.
Rachit Ranjan, appreciate your expertise. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Amitabh. Glad to be here.
You can get all the latest news and analysis on our website. If you do like our kind of journalism, do support us as well. You can do that as well on our website. You've been watching Stat News Global. I'm Amitabh Revi.